at least for the males, to prove that they have value. That
Sure.
they, like Kun himself, for example, highly intelligent, has nothing specifically to do with fighting, but like that man is a valuable asset to the family regardless, even just with his mind. Where I think the Aerie family is a little bit more about like raw strength. And like, they're known for their white hair and they use long swords.
It would signify the sword. Like he's the
That's what I
perfect
mean.
sword,
So it's like,
right?
I think their family upholds this value of like, if you can't use the sword well, you're useless to this family. And it's like,
AoA, that's a triple play. New episodes, I couldn't wait. Yeah. Open your mind at the first gate. Press play, no need to debate. AoA, check me out. Look, plugged in, you can catch the hype. Golden Dawn, how we follow the light. Anime like life, married to it, my wife.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages? Welcome back to the AoA show. I'm your host, as always, Ian, along with my boys Isaiah.
yo, yo, yo.
And Gavin.
Hi.
And today we are here to talk about Tower of God, Season 2 of the Webtoon, episodes 166 to 179. If you missed our prior live stream, you definitely want to go check that out. We just got off the recording that and talking about some sweet blog posts. If you haven't watched that video yet, definitely watch that as well for all of your Tower of God content, all in one great place. But yeah, we're excited to talk about the chapters that we read in more of a deep dive analysis sort of way. Again, huge shout out to the folks in Discord who voiced their opinion in terms of things that they wanted to hear us talk about today. We compiled some of the best results from there, the ones that had the most reactions to them, made them into a list, and we will be taking a deeper dive on those points here today. But as always, folks, make sure if you like the content that you are liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, sharing with your friends, and commenting your thoughts down below. What did you think of today's episode discussion? What did you think about these chapters in particular? And what were your thoughts, or are your thoughts, on Tower of God as a whole? But anyway, let's hop into this discussion. So the first thing that we want to talk about today is going to be Ryun totally scolding the hell out of Bam and his persistence in trying to pursue Rachel. And now the fact that he has basically put his comrades that he has claimed to love and cherish so much in danger. And Ryun kind of just gives him the sauce, right? And kind of provides this tough love, older sister, motherly figure that Bam seems to need in certain times. And this for me is why, I don't know, I really like Ryun as a character. Like, best girl aside, all that kind of stuff, like, I just like her as a character in general. And I like the fact that she is willing to give Bam the cold hard truth on what he need, in terms of the things that he needs to hear. Even more so than, your average person, even like your Coons and stuff like that. Because we have to remember that Ryun has a very knowledgeable, is very knowledgeable when it comes to the tower, right? She's a guide. Yeah, she has it on pretty good authority in terms of like what's going to happen and what needs to happen in order to put these things into place. And she's not about that whole like, let's hope it all pulls through and like hunky-dory teamwork thing. It's like, no. Bam. If you don't get strong enough to fight this guy in a month, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, 20 of you guys are like fleas compared to Akeem as compared to Bam, or how strong Bam needs to be. Like, we don't have time to just nurture him and everything. Like, this is it. Like, push comes to shove, he's going to die regardless anyway. So she really just gives it to Bam in this moment and is like, you need to shelve your ego here. You need to put it aside because you're putting people in danger. And it's like, do you care about these people or do you not? And it definitely has an effect on Bam. Absolutely. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on this.
What I love the most about Mama Ryun is that she definitely does sort of very quickly. She seems to, like we said it before, with her being a guide and her knowing how people, where everybody like needs to be in sort of the big picture here, can assimilate into any role that like she needs to be to like persuade whoever it is she needs to get there, right? So it's like, before, when she first joins up with Bam's team, it's like she realizes that like at that moment she needs to be like an aide, right? Just somebody who helps Bam and his friends get out of the mountain or cave or wherever they fought with Mr. Flex and all that. And then in this specific scene or instance, but more importantly, just actually sort of in this arc in general, she has kind of assumed this more like mentor, / parental almost level of guidance with Bam, where it's like, look, like it or not, like I'm telling you hard facts, and whether you want to hear them or not is quite frankly irrelevant, because these are the stakes right now. This is what we have to lose. This is what you have to lose, and you're not playing like at the level that you need to be playing. And so it's like, it was a nice one. It was nice because it just kind of cool to see Ryun get like that. Like, what I mean? She seems to. I always have a hard time like placing Ryun, like where I feel about her, what she's got going on in her head, because she's just so goddamn mysterious. But like. She does, she does care about Bam. She has Bam's best interest at heart, and she does want him to succeed and be happy with his friends. But in order to get to that stage, like, he's gonna have to work for it, right? I think she is actually the one who has the line where she's like, "You look happy now. You seem really happy with your friends. You're gonna have to work crazy fucking hard to keep you want to stay here if you want to keep that." And this is a nice sort of refresher of like, hey man, like this moment here is cool that you're hanging out with Kuner, but like. Mm-hmm. There's work to do, right? We don't get to this isn't the end. We don't get to just enjoy this. And so I like her being like the, no BS, let's get to work kind of attitude.
Great. Gavin, you got thoughts?
I'm going to say you can love it, hate it, or not like it, but I ship Mama Ryun with Papa Raptor. And you might not agree with it, but
what?
I think I
came out of left field.
Yeah, I don't know. I was like thinking about it, and I'm like, I get this weird vibe that I'm like, I just, Papa Raptor's on that wavelength. He's always looking out for the youngins. And I see, like, Ryun, although she may not have that intention per se, I can see, like, a cool relationship dynamic with them. And, it is a little weird and doesn't seem really constructed by any, like, interactions that they've had together. Because
I have no evidence.
No, it's based off of personality preference. You can love it, hate it. All I'm saying is I can see the real Papa and Mama coming out and going in together. But on a more serious note, with the interaction that she had with Bam, what I appreciate is that at least in this moment, it seems like Bam is really taking into consideration her thoughts and really like harboring them, like, and going to try to follow in her direction that she's trying to divert him to, and like really just be a better person and try to like just finagle this whole situation properly. However, as I say that, anything that Ryun says or Kun or really anybody who is, a close secondhand man to Bam, anything that they say gets thrown out the window when Rachel is shown on panel, obviously. And I'm really curious to how all of this advice and guidance that Ryun is giving him is going to like really come to terms in his next interaction with Rachel. And is everything that Ryun just said going to go to vain, or is Bam really going to take it to heart and move forward past it, etc.? I don't feel like that's the case, at least at this moment, until we get further on. But it seemed like Bam really took what she said to heart and is going to try to follow in that, like, guidance. But to be determined.
Yeah, interesting. And to be fair, I could see where the Arc Raptor Ryun ship comes in terms of, like, I think of certain couples out there that it's like they have the, like, very tough love mother figure who's, like, shrouded in mystery, beautiful, doesn't take shit, and then you have like Arc Raptor, not that he's a pushover in any way, shape, or form, but he's like definitely more, all right, kids, you know what I mean? Like, it's a good cop, bad
it's
cop
like the
type thing.
Like good guy, the compassionate side as well, with like the very, like, this is real, like the realistic side. So I don't know. I feel like that would be a nice
I could
dynamic.
see it in a different world.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I don't think. No, I don't ship them. I'm just saying I could see why you would get that. I don't think there's enough. They literally.
Who else would Ryun get? She needs love. Papa Raptor needs love.
If they don't have one conversation, we can't ship them.
Well,
they've literally never spoken to each other.
I know, but if you put them in a room, they're going to have.
Yeah, but then they'd have to speak to each other because they're the only two niggas in that room.
Well, no. But what I'm saying is, or they can just make out,
still not talk.
Or they can just make out, and you don't know.
That's in your fan fiction.
Right, I said, I feel like you're taking this like 1,000 more % than you should.
What, dude? It's in the next panel.
I said I could see where you're coming from. I didn't say that we should. I didn't say that we should ship them.
And all I'm saying
enemies.
is you can see a bed on the other side of the room.
Let's ship them together.
Like, no, I don't see that as a ship. I'm just saying I see why you say
all
that.
I'm saying is if you lock them in a room with the bed, y'all know what's going to happen, and you're going to have a baby Raptor Ryun.
That's my fault for even indulging slightly in your ridiculousness. Anyway, moving on.
I love it.
So now we have Thor, or more commonly known as the God of Guardians, who basically tells Bam that he has been the trainer to, I guess, irregulars, in a sense, people that open the gate on their own, or the door on their own volition, and that they call it a sort of Revolution Road. So what do we think about the God of Guardians, and what do we think about him being the trainer to said irregulars, having been potentially the trainer of jihad as well, which we will get into, so we don't have to go too hard into the jihad thing yet. But just this character in general, he's pretty damn dope. You already knew, but like I could see, I love the Thor resemblance as well that they were going with. But I do think it's interesting how this guy has been around since before ever. You know what I mean? Jihad and the 10 Great Families. And how he's able to kind of peer into Bam's soul in a weird way, right? That he's like, oh, okay, you're interesting. You're kind of weak compared to the rest of them, but you have like this weird potential, and like you kind of pique my interest here, right? Whereas like, oh, that your guy came in, he was already stronger than I was, when he came into the thing. I think it's cool how he could see that, and he's like, come here, I got a test for you. And I love how he picks Bam up by like his little fingers. Bam's like, it's okay. And Coon's like, no. He just hops away. Like, that was so funny. That was great. But do we have thoughts on this guy?
I like him. He's really cool. I like, more importantly, what his meeting with Bam, alluding to the idea that like these irregulars are these all-powerful, let's just say potentially all-powerful figures in the tower, but they are by no means like busted out the gate, right? Like people, will refer all the time. They're like, yeah, Yurek's kind of like a different monster. Like that nigga was just jacked out, like out the womb. Like he was, trouncing empires before, like while he was in diapers. But like, everybody always makes the comment when they meet Bam of like, wow, you're like kind of fucking weak, but like, you know what I mean? And so like, I like this idea that like irregulars, even though they have the potential to be the definition of OP as far as the tower is concerned, they still have to work for it. Like it's not something that's just like, at least, as far as Yurek excluded, they do have to train and they have to work and acquire these skills. And Bam is a little bit of a special case because we know he has specific or special abilities that help him along the way. But like generally speaking, we don't know a whole lot about Enryu except that he not made the thorn. He didn't make the thorn, right?
He used it to kill.
He was the first one to
correct.
Yes.
Okay. But like again, so I like the idea that it makes sense that like these people or regulars who are renowned across the tower as king killers need a trainer. They need somebody who like is able to teach them. And it's great that the person who is their teacher is like this literal larger than life like deity. I mean, he's literally like a god. He's literally a god, a giant god.
Kind of awesome. Yeah. I have to say.
Definitely no. And what I appreciate is the, even though slight information that we have gotten on the 10 Great Families in terms of where they came from and, their path to that led to where they are now. And even though it's no information, we still have a lot to learn. It's nice that SIU is dropping these little like seeds in where it's like, oh, later on when you find out more about the 10 Great Families and, how they are, the way they are, you can trace all the way back into season 2, episode, 170, whatever, and be like, oh yeah, this was one of the stops that they made on their journey that led them to where they are today. Right. And it's a very substantial one at that, and it ties into, now Bam's journey. So I just really appreciate everything that went down, and you couldn't have picked a better guardian. Like, this man is a literal G, and yeah, it's actually really cool.
Dude, I love the panels where he just hops down, and his hair is just like flying through the sky. And then we were reading at one point, I'm like, he jumped because it said jump, but like, and you guys were like, well, yeah, he jumped, but like, I meant that in the sense of like, he's really big, like he's gonna come down hard. Like,
go boom.
Yeah, like why did he jump and why is he blindingly fast? Like, I don't know. That just it's really cool the shots that they showed of this guy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Anyway, moving on now to the test that he gives Bam. To kind of be one with himself, understand himself, come to grips with who he really is. Because in the end, he says that your comrades are not going to be able to bail you out of every situation. It's going to be you and you alone, and you have to understand who you are. It's the only way you're going to ascend this tower and do it properly without losing yourself in the process. So he does the, very, maybe stereotypical isn't the right word, but the trope of going through the coming to grips with yourself type thing, which we see in a lot of shonen, we see in a lot of just cinema in general. We usually get this scene here. This one was cool because the entity, the blue monster, appears to be the thorn, like the actual, or we don't know this for certain, at least I don't. I don't know if it is solely the thorn or if it is the thorn that is exacerbated a potential dark side of Bam, and this is something we talked about in our blog post discussion. So I don't have the full scoop on that. But regardless, he is the power. So he definitely has something to do with the Thorn, whether he's fully the Thorn, and this is the manifestation of what the Thorn's power is, the personified version of it, or it's just whatever form it takes in Bam's head specifically, because this is his dark side. Regardless, pretty creepy looking dude. So, yeah, and he tries to coerce Bam, like it seems he's done to potentially other people, whether in this form or another. To join the dark side, right? He says, you just listen, dude. I'm going to give you all the power you need. All of it. He's like, don't even worry about it. All right. I got you. All you have to do is just step on the heads of like everyone. Nobody's going to mess with you. I promise. And Bam is like, yeah, that's kind of lame though. This guy's like, what? Like, no. He's like, this isn't the part where you say that. Like, I had this rehearsed. I know exactly what you say. You say, yes, daddy, please give me the power so I could crush people's heads. He's like, you're not supposed to say that. And Bam's like, yeah, but it's kind of whack. Like, why would you? You're kind of a coward, honestly. Why would you go about that? That's not true power. It's because you're running from something else because you fear something else. And he even alludes to someone, I think of Rachel, where he's like, the people that I've seen that step on these people to get higher up the tower, it's not because they want to, it's because they're running. It's because they're running because they fear anyone who has potentially more power than they do. So they feel that justified in their actions. They feel that in order to combat this fear, they have to subjugate everyone that's potentially weaker than them. They have to rise to the top, not because it's the right thing to do or whatever. It's because they want to get rid of that fear by instilling fear in everybody else. And that, my friend, is the most cowardly way of going about it. So no, I will not be accepting your power. Good day, sir. So that was pretty interesting. I don't know. Again, if you guys have thoughts, let me know, because that was a very Spark Notes version of what happened.
Yeah, I thought this was a cool scene. I don't know, because the way that, obviously they make a reference to the fact that Jihad was in a very similar situation like this when he went up the tower. I'd like to think that this is kind of like a manifestation of a mix between Bam's mental state when he was in that Thorn enraged mode and like the literal power of the Thorn when it consumed him. I think it literally created like this being inside him, and like this is supposed to be the manifestation of like that version of Bam, that version that was like power. I need this power. I need all this power to be able to step on people and get them to do whatever I want. And I think now that Bam is disconnected, obviously, from that mental state, Bam is the Bam we know. He's like, no, that shit's not cool. But like sort of this side of most people, like just because Bam acknowledges that this isn't good doesn't mean this thing goes away. I think the struggle will come later. You actually said this in our blog post episodes, but like right now, Bam is cool, right? He knows right and wrong, but like when Bam is pushed to those limits, when those lines start to become blurred, i.e., let's say he's in a scenario with Rachel, like that's when I think the temptation of this power or this creature will be at its strongest. And it'll be like, look, you could do it like right now. She's right there. Like, just take, you know what I mean? Instead of like now, of course, Bam can say no, because again, he's had a moment to reflect. He's, a much more calm and cool and level-headed. But is Bam the same way, or will he be the same way when the situation, calls for him to act that way the most? I think that's where the conflict will come with this thing. But I'm curious to see like what future powers he gets will either add on to this thing, enhance it, maybe like a second beat, like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm curious to see what else comes of this.
Yeah. It is interesting though, because he does, and this is a panel we'll go over soon enough. He does see Rachel again, later on in the game, and he seems to be pretty indifferent. So
I don't mean like just the sight of her. I mean like if he's put in a situation in these tests where like either he could kill her or he has to stop somebody else. Like when he's put in a situation where he could alter whether basically she lives or dies, let's say, or really anybody. I don't even think specifically it has to be Rachel. I just think Rachel's probably the biggest trigger for him. But that's my point, is that like it's not, again, it's easiest for him to say this now when he's just kind of chilling in the rice pot or wherever they say he is. But like when Rachel's on the floor about to die, whether it's by his hand or somebody else, or let's say Kuhn's, but like, is he still going to be able to, and if he can't help them because he feels he's not strong enough, like it's going to be a lot easier for this thing to tempt him to be like, yo, just take this power. You could do it. You could save this person's life, or you could, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. Plus, I don't think Bam's really in the place right now to even reach out to Rachel because of the scenario that's going on. So, obviously she's there, but he really isn't in his place to overstep any boundaries in terms of A, talking to her, or B, capturing her, because like they have Joaquin and, this whole big plot point that's going on. So it's not like he has the leisure to just disconnect and go into that. But what Isaiah was saying, that I completely agree with most of his points, and that's, I don't, in this scene specifically, it looks like he at least has one foot in his big boy pants and he is taking that step forward. But again, he's so wishy-washy in my mind when it comes to Rachel and those interactions to where I feel like it's just going to get thrown out the window in a lot of situations, or not a lot, but in the few situations that he's going to be isolated with her or have to come up with these decisions. And again, that's where we're going to see this power come up again in terms of overcoming him and really Bam succumbing to that power, which I don't think he's going to, but it's definitely going to be a conflict that he's going to have to resolve in the next couple chapters or in the future.
Yeah.
So,
I think he's made big strides actually in separating himself from that mindset in terms of Rachel.
Oh, 100%.
Actually, I think even though, again, he doesn't have direct access to Rachel in terms of that game, I think just even the fact that he doesn't really, he's like, he does make one mention, but it's like, oh, okay, Rachel. But it's like he's made a lot of progress. He's definitely gotten stronger over this past month or the months, since that whole incident happened. And I think the fact that he's so easily able to be like, you know what I mean? When this thing comes in, it's like, hey, you want the power to be God? And Bam's like, nah. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't even bat an eye. I'm like, wow, that's impressive because I usually don't, you know what I mean? Like you don't see that off the bat. There's definitely some sort of more internal struggle. So I'm curious to see later
I see that
on.
being his demise, almost like he's trying to brush it off, and it's easier
Okay.
said than done, like almost putting on a mask. But when, push comes to shove and he's in the grass and in the trenches, going through it, like it's easy just to say, all right, this is my decision. I'm good, and he's like telling himself, I'm fine. I'm going through these things. I'm good. But when it's down to where it counts, I really don't think that Bam at this moment is able to overcome those feelings in terms of, really not caring about Rachel and just kind of putting her on the back burner. Like at the end of the day, I think his heart is still with her and that is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And
So you could be right. The only thing with that is that the whole like wearing a mask, like putting up a front, would seem hard when it's like he's talking to this inside his own mind. So I would have to assume that the reason this guy is so flustered is because when he looks into Bam's eyes or whatever, like the internal, it's that like he truly sees that Bam means what he says. And this guy's like, you know what I mean? It's not like, okay, this kid isn't putting up a facade. It's not like he's going to break at a moment's notice. Like he genuinely means that. And it's kind of making me crap myself.
yes,
here.
but that is off the heels of Ryun now just telling him to, hey, clean up your act and do it. And that is and that's what I'm saying. To make that decision coming off of what Ryun said in this moment, I feel like it's easy for Bam to say these and stand up to the power. However, given time after that conversation, say a year down the road, it's going to be on him to stick to that guidance and follow it through. And what I'm saying is I don't think he has that grit to stay on that mindset when push comes to shove. In the future, maybe, but it's gonna for me, it's a hard sell that he's just, oh, I'm a grown man, I'm gonna roll up with it. Like for me, that's a hard sell. It's still gonna be there in his mind, and it's easier. I feel like given the situation coming off of Ryun in that pep talk, it was easier for him to confront. However, if she never even mentioned anything to him at that moment, I feel like we would have had a very different interaction with this power, and it's gonna take some time for Bam to really be steadfast in that thought.
Third point, what if like Bam being so steadfast to reject the power is because it disgusts him? Like it comes out of a place of him being afraid of what it made him do and the kind of person it made him into when he was on the Train City platform, and like the memories of that moment combined with the scolding he got from Ryun has got him in an actual like place in his mind of like, no, I don't like that. What that did to me and where the place that took me is a place I don't ever want to go again. And like I do think there's a part of what Bam said that like he believes, and I think that's part just of his character. But I would also be curious if it was from a place of fear, if he's afraid of how much power he could this thing could give him, and how if he ends up permanently out of control or more out of control than he ended up on Train City.
Yeah, I can see that too. Personally.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. We could talk about this topic in particular for like
Hours,
a straight hour. Curious to hear your thoughts, obviously without spoilers, on this one. Maybe giving a more of an interpretation of how this goes down, because it's the first time reading it. But what we do know is that Jihad himself had a similar scenario and made the opposite decision, which our God of Guardians states. He says, okay, Bam must be, or this kid must be going through the same thing. He must be like, talking with his inner self. He's like, don't succumb to it. Don't do what Jihad did. And we're like, Oh, okay, that's interesting, right? Because it's like, you know, did Jihad immediately succumb to it? Did he maybe did Jihad have a similar frame of mind, like maybe we were saying, and then like down the line it wears on him, and he's like, okay, give me the power, like I'm done. Like what, right? Because I'm curious to know if Jihad was potentially had, you know, good intentions, right? When things initially had sprung up and when he went on this journey with the 10 family heads, or what the motivations were, or if he was like kind of evil from the start and the second they gave him this opportunity, he's like, give it, you know what I mean? Like, I'm curious to see that, like if something corrupted him, whatever the case might be.
That'd be the biggest plot point if he was like Bam, you know, starting off, but when he accepted this power, it was such a 180 that literally just changed everything. Like that would actually be pretty cool.
That's what I think it is. I think at least from the way the story has portrayed him so far, is that we're looking at like the story of like a man who with the 10, you know, with the people of the heads of the families, like went up this tower in pursuit of a much nobler cause and then got to the top and was like, you know what?
Dude,
fuck
that
this.
parallel
Like,
would be so cool, especially when he like meets Jihad in the future and like, you know, they kind of reflect on each other's journeys and just where that one, you know, change of mindset like really made that impact. Oh, all right. I'm relishing.
Anyway, moving on, because we were on that point for a while, but it was a good one. So moving on here, we have Kun v. Rachel in their game that they went through, where they basically have to catch the sweet fish. And Kun just plays the hell out of Rachel again, you know, but doesn't kill her. When he potentially had the chance to, you could, he says he didn't do it because Bam was there. And he's like, all right, next time I ain't gonna, you know, I'm gonna kill her. You know, we're going to see if that decision bites him later on, because he definitely relishes in it for a moment. And he's like, Rachel, you garbage. Okay. You're useless. All right. And you're ugly to boot. So how's that? And then she goes back, and then Joaquin is like, yeah, you are pretty freaking useless, huh? And Rachel's like seething in snake. So this was a pretty awesome scene. I mean, just every scene where Rachel's just getting what comes to her is pretty satisfying. You know, what thoughts you have?
I relished it. I absolutely love this. And because those moments that we talk about where Rachel gets what's coming to her, are few and far between, actually. They don't happen as often as they should.
True.
And so, you know, it's usually with the then unwanted or from her wanted assistance of like somebody that she's coerced and helping her, being like, don't worry, Rachel, I got your back. But these moments where it's like, all right, I'm going to need you to put up or shut up now. Like one-on-one, what can you do? And then you find out it's like, she's actually trash. It's like, it's just so great to see. And like, I feel like at least, you know, for me, this was like I needed this where Kun kind of is just venting to her about like, yeah, all the fucked up shit you did, I'm going to show you like you are so fucking lucky that you've got like a band of niggas around you that are like willing to fight with you. Because God help you, if you were by yourself, you'd be dead. And like shows her just with the simple fact of this test, which again, in hindsight, wasn't anything difficult, right? It was the mere fact that fish was compressed. And like now that it came out the water and looked huge, would have been it. Should have been done. And Kun and like of all people, again, Kun being the one to save her and being like, you know what? I don't even think you're worth it. It's like, I just needed it. I needed it.
It was a good
feeling. If there's one thing, SIU is making me one sadistic bastard when it comes to Rachel, because like I don't wish harm on anybody in this world except for this one character, and this was the most blissful moment of not only seeing her almost bite the dust, but giving her that reality check by none other than the most gorgeous character in this entire story, Kun Aguero Agnes. So that's all you need to say about it is Kun is amazing and Rachel is the name who needs to fall off a bridge. So we're gonna keep on moving on. I wanted to say that was the girl who should not be named, but I said her name and it was.
I had a feeling you were going for that.
I was, but it kind of.
I've seen Harry Potter.
Yeah,
all right,
I am Harry Potter.
Anyway, so I am Harry Potter. So moving on, because there's really not much to talk about besides this was awesome, you know, to see this happen.
She doesn't deserve any more screen time.
You love to see it. So anyway, moving on, we had, all right, so this is kind of, these points are a little convoluted because they go into, okay, so in particular, Yeon's backstory, they go into it here, and then they also show flashbacks later on. Mm-hmm. So this might look weird in the timeline, but this is the next thing that happens in terms of talking points here in her fight with Angel. Because Yeon's whole thing is that, okay, I can't control my power. And she even goes to Quattro for guidance, the psychopath, because as crazy as he is, he at least knows how to control his fire, right? But it's not until this that we really realize that it's like, it's not just a matter of controlling the fire. Like, she is the fire, right? And it's like, it seems like, well, no, duh. But it's like, there's a little more to it than that, right? It's like, and I find it interesting because we also have a parallel of Jan's family having this pride in the fire. And also we had Joaquin and his family saying that they are the prize sword. Mm-hmm. So I find it interesting that they have certain symbolism for like the families, right? Like, we are the family of fire. We are the family of a sword. Like, we are the family of this, we're the family of that. So like, your particular affinity towards those things definitely classifies you as higher or lower within those families. As we can see, Jan, accidentally scorches this dude to death, this poor soul. And rather than being scolded for it or whatever, is congratulated by the higher ups, being like, "Oh, you are great," which again goes to show this whole thing where it's like, people like Angel, for instance, thinks that all the people from the 10 great families are assimilated into this role, evil bastards, right? Which, to be fair, a good chunk of them pretty evil bastards, but it doesn't mean that Jan or any other ones that decide to go down the path of good fall in line with that assertion, right? So this is just one prime example of it. And if it wasn't for Jan's mother, it seems, being like, I believe it was her mother being like, listen, you need to be careful of your power. You need to understand that like your power is volatile and you need to fear it, because if you're just going to let it loose and people will get hurt. So this was interesting. And I think this was a big bump up for Jan's character. Again, it's interesting now reading the blog post, how, SIU was saying, he's like, well, at least at this time, when he's like, damn, gonna have to put her on panel a little less, is killing my hand whenever there's fire involved, right? Like, why couldn't she just shoot cookies or something? He said, like something ridiculous. But I feel like every time she is on panel, she gets these like big bumps in character development, where it's like all these other characters are like, not all the time, but are generally on panel a little bit more, and we'll get these like incremental bump ups character, and then like we're finally caught up to Jan, but then her character development will be like, and just catch up right to where these other ones were, right? It's not like these small things, it's pretty huge. So what did you guys think about this?
I absolutely thought it was dope. I really like, first off, I liked this for Jan's character specifically, because I felt like of the side characters that we met in the beginning of season 2, hers was one of the ones that I immediately was like, all right, if we do this right, like there's more here with this character than like we've been led on, and I feel like that could go places. Even like I always think back to the what is it? Remember like that strength test they did with the Shinsu, where they were all hitting the thing, and like she like immediately skyrockets, at least until Prince goes up. In terms of strength or whatever, or power scaling, triumphs over everybody, but it like almost looked as if she wasn't even trying. And like something about that told me, I'm like, okay, so sort of in the reins of Bam here, like this is clearly a character who like has a lot of power, but doesn't have a lot of experience controlling it, or like doesn't know how to navigate that power once she's like tapped into it, like 100%. And once we meet more of Jan and learn about her, we learn that is sort of the case, and she's terrified of the fact that she could burn anything and anyone to a crisp, basically without even trying. But when you see her show up at the Train City station with Wang Nan and Kun, there's that bump in confidence you get from her, right? Where it's like she knows how to use her powers a little bit more precise now, and she's doing all these like combos with Wang Nan and stuff, and it's like, okay, you sort of see her get into a little bit more of her element, and she's not terrified, so to speak, of using fire in any way, shape, or form, but she's still she's still a far cry away from like, I've got this shit under wraps. And in this moment, once you really get to see the backstory, again, it was just another like sort of look inside the window, because I think people were saying in our stream, they were like, oh, you guys did Angel so dirty, like with the way you talked about it or whatever. Because of how, fucked over she was by society. And it's like, dude, I get that. But I think people always, and I would say this with like really any of the characters that are from any of the families. So like the Kuns, Yeons. I think people so often think that just because these characters are from the great families, right, that they're from these places that are of prosperity and higher up and have all this reputation, like that doesn't mean that like they were living in peaches and like everything was, hunky-dory. She roasted this nigga to a crisp, and her family was like, yo, good job. That's dope. If that doesn't fuck a kid up, bro, like, I don't know what does. Like, of course, it's like these she literally grew up being told that, like, it's okay to do this, that this behavior is fine. And so when her mom has that moment with her where she pulls her aside and is like, look, you know, I know what you've heard, but, like, this is some shit you're going to have to learn to control and keep under wraps, because it's not all, you know, fine and dandy if you light niggas on fire whenever you want. And so to see her struggle with this clearly, like, it's a sign. It clearly tells you that, like, this is, regardless of her upbringing or where she's from, this is a character who is good, because just the fact that she's struggling with this idea, right? She tells you that she's not okay with this, that on every level or on some level of her being, she does not fuck with lighting niggas on fire whenever the fuck she wants. That she's like, this doesn't feel right. And so I like seeing this parallel, one in the fight we see a little bit later with them, with Bam and Eon, of like watching sort of both of them kind of unhinge for a minute and go full power. But yeah, I really, this was much needed for Eon specifically. And I enjoyed it.
Yeah. What do you think, Gavin?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, you hit a lot, pretty much most of the points. I ain't beating
Sure.
to the grave. But for me, she gets a +1 in respect. I'm about it. You know, dope stuff, like you said before. The backstory's already done. What I am looking forward to, or what I would wish, is to get her more screen time with Rack, because I really loved their dynamic together and how they fought. And, like, they were some of the funniest panels. And I want to see, like, a grown Yan with Rack, because, like, it doesn't matter how strong you are. When you're with Rack, you're on his level and you're fighting by his rules, and he will make you go by his rules. And I would love to see that, like, dynamic together again, especially after they've grown. And that's all I wish for. So yeah, that's what
that would be good. That would be good.
Be very good.
Some cool stuff. All right. Anyway, moving on. We have the other side of it in this fight, and that is Angel and her backstory. And first of all, I love this panel. I think this might have been my favorite panel, or one of them in the chapters that we've read so far. It's fantastic. But we have a pretty reversed side of the story. But then again, maybe not so much, right? Where it's like Isaiah hit on a good point, which I think about this all the time. Probably said it at one point or another, that it's, you know, just because this person is in a situation, a privileged situation, right, does not mean that it is all peaches and cream, right, where they are. You again, you take your Coons, you take your Yans, etc. Even your Dorsey, right? Right. It's not, you know, a lot of people, especially on the lower rungs, I guess we'll take Angel as an example, automatically assume or assimilate you into this role where it's like, well, you're good looking, or you're rich, or you're this, or you're that. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm sure Eon is very, thankful for, like, you know, her good looks, or maybe the fact that she's from 10 great families, or whatever the fact may be. But the thing is, at the end of the day, is that doesn't automatically mean that they are just in a position now where their life is just smooth sailing, right? And I think that's the disconnect that you get from not talking with one another, just in general. And you could take that as a life lesson, because I think it's applicable. But we have a prime example of it here in Angel's view towards the 10 great families, and specifically Eon in this fight. And we get her backstory, which essentially is her mother, kind of having that same attitude, but in an even different way, says, okay, my life is trash. I feel like trash. How am I going to ascend to the level of the 10 great families or whatever? How am I going to be accepted into the upper echelon of society? And she says, oh, man, I'll sleep my way to the top, right? Like, that's what I'm going to do, right? So she basically goes, she sleeps with said dude from the 10 great families, has a child. She's like, this is my end. He's like, oh, I don't think you got it. Like, that was like a one night stand kind of thing. You know, like, I could care less about you or your kid, right? So she's like, it takes all that out on Angel, which is very sad, right? Regardless of, we'll get into our thoughts of whether we think Angel is justified or not. And Isaiah, had already gone into probably what we're all in agreement on. But point being is that it is definitely sad when we see this. And I did feel for her in this moment, because I'm like, that's rough, right? To be just unloved by your mother, and you were the product of nothing more than just a bargaining chip, right? To be promoted to that level that failed. So now you are just trash, right? And to have your own mother or seems to be your only guardian looking at you in such a way is definitely heartbreaking. And so, we go from there. I'm curious to know, what your guys' thoughts are in terms of her backstory, and do you understand her actions? Do you think she's justified, etc.? What do you got for me?
I definitely think that her actions aren't justified. I understand 100% what she's feeling. I understand where her generalization comes from. I mean, we see it in people like Mr. Ruffalo. We see it in people like I forget the loan shark's name way back from the beginning of season 2. Remember?
Damn,
Anybody?
that's bringing it back.
Yeah.
Oh, Lurker.
Lurker.
Whoa!
All I'm saying is, I got you.
That was a good save. I forgot his name.
Thank you, Gavin. I could have told me about the heart attack, but thank you. Yeah, where like we see it in all these characters where it's like these people have been so fucked over by society, by the tower, by the environment this tower breeds, that they just start hating, right? They hate everything and everyone. Anyone that has anything to do with like the object of their hatred or the thing that like fucked over their life, they're like no, like you know, Angel's like, oh, you're from the all right, I don't like you, like, you know, like get out of here. And before you even ask what her first name, like, you know what I mean, and it just accentuates this point of like this tower. It's, I mean, like, you know, it's the fault of the tower, right? Because I feel like this tower does nothing to help people like Angel who are afflicted by, you know, these kinds of injustice or wrongdoings, but B, does nothing to say that like behaving like this is bad or like that you shouldn't do this. As a matter of fact, I would go so far to say the tower rewards people for doing this kind of stuff. This environment that Jihad has created, by extension, breeds an air that like rewards people who step on top of other people, who, you know, lie, cheat, steal, kill, whatever to get ahead. And so, of course, Angel would be a person like she is. Of course, being from this tower, she would grow up thinking the way she does. But, like, again, the whole point of what I believe Bam and his group and friends are doing is to establish the fact that, like, there's not one way to run this train, right? You can do things, and you have to do things if you want any sort of real growth. You have to do things better. You have to do things different. Bam for president 2020. But I feel like, again, that is, you know, it you know, like I said with the other 2 points, it's brought up here again, where it's like Angel is, instead of being like, all right, well, who is Yeon? Like, or who is Yiwa? Like, what is her story? What is she doing here? How much of a connection does she have? Because with Yiwa being from the Yeon family does not mean that Yiwa has committed all the crimes that the Yeon family has. She hasn't committed anything, you know what I mean? She's a product of her environment, the same as Angel is. But your circumstances don't define who you are or what you've done. And they don't mean that the labels that come with what your circumstances get to just be attached to you whenever you want. You are, Yiwa is, Angel is, they are all their own people. And this is Angel, in my opinion, her, you know, failure to come to terms with that, right? To recognize that. So she ends up lashing out, generalizing, being like, oh, you're from the Yeon family. You said that like that. So you have to be what's wrong with the world. If I kill you, if I can get rid of you, I can erase the hatred. And again, we see the same exact behavior in Ruffalo Joe with Bam. He's like, you are the problem. It's people like you, people who are gifted, people who have everything. They have the looks, they have the print, like they have it all. We see it with like people who get wronged and are told that the only way you're going to get out of this or get ahead is if you make somebody else feel exactly like you do right now, instead of taking a step back and being like, well, wait, can we do this differently? Why don't we just try talking? You know, it's sad, but it doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, no, for sure. I echo pretty much everything that you just said about her, especially with not justifying her actions. But another thing that kind of like solidifies her in my eyes, it was the fact that instead of, having that conversation and really, breaking down the problem and what was happening in terms of why she's fighting Yiwa or anything, literally she was coming up with her own justifications in terms of fighting her, which was like, oh, look at her eyes and the way she's looking at me, like she's looking down on me, just like everyone in that tower. Like, instead of really looking at it from Yiwa's wow, I just lost my brain. No,
Angel?
No. What was I saying? I actually don't remember.
Oh, you lost the thought you were saying?
Yeah, I lost the thought.
Well, I will say,
wow,
while you're thinking of that I totally echo that. And if you didn't say that, that was the thing I was going to bring up. I was going to say the nail in the coffin for me in terms of, okay, not that I really ever sympathize with Angel, but like, does she get brownie points? Was the deciding factor the sense that she was trying to project this onto Yeon, which is kind of what we said, but it was even exemplified in the sense that it's like, those eyes, that's what you think I'm garbage. You think I'm garbage, right? She's like almost like pushing her, like, you think I'm garbage. And it's like, well, no, she doesn't. Like, you're just attacking her. So maybe that's the justification here. And she's projecting all these things onto, and it's almost like she wants it to be true, right? Exactly. It is like she wants it to be true. And I think that's where she really falls from grace. For me, in the sense that it's like, I think regardless of what Yeon did, like even if Yeon didn't fight back, even if Yeon did whatever, like she even says like, I hate it even more the fact that you're not outwardly like aggressive to me because I know you're like that inside. And it's like Angel wasn't even remotely thinking of giving her a chance whatsoever to explain herself or to try and look at this in a different frame of mind. She had this solidified in her brain from the rip, and this is exactly how she was going to run it. And she's now with this band with Fug. She's like, this is what we're going to do. These people are scum. They think I'm scum. Done deal, right? And it's like, for me, it's like, dude, you're so entrenched in this frame of mind that pulling you out of it at this point is going to be a far cry, and I don't really sympathize with you in this regard because you had chances to try and take a different path, and you actively chose not to. You didn't want to help yourself. This wasn't about helping you. This wasn't about helping yourself. This wasn't about some righteous cause. It was about, in a very hard way, or blunt way, you not getting enough attention, you know what I mean? And you projecting all of that onto whoever the next person in the 10 Great Families is. So
now I do think, again, in the instance of comparing someone like Angel to Refugio, like it is a fair-ish claim to say that like when these kinds of people were at their lowest of lows, groups like Fug took advantage of that, right? And manipulated these thoughts and being like, oh, did you get fucked over by the 10 Great Families? Join Fug. Like, it's literally a campaign pitch for them.
Yeah,
where they're like, are you tired of getting fucked over and screwed by, every member of Jihad and his homies? Like, come join Fug. We're going to kill them all. And it's like, so of course, now she's like, no. That, like you said, when she meets Yiwa and sees that Yiwa is not this monstrous, spitting on everybody that's beneath her woman, she's even angrier because she's like, no, that's not the story that's not what Fug, like, you're the bad. You're wrong. You're the bad guy. You're what's wrong with the world. I'm with Fug. I'm doing what's right. I'm the hero. Like, you know what I mean? And so, again, we see it in Refugio where it's like once they're confronted with reality because they've been sort of force-fed or shown this lie, right, by Fug or this veil, because they're not confronted with reality, because nobody in Fug or they have nobody in their life to be like, hey, look, this is like, life's a little bit more complicated and it's not so black and white. When they are shown that, they literally can't comprehend it and they sort of fall to pieces. And I think that's what we see when she's like, when she sort of just starts spitting all these insults and stuff at Yiwa.
For sure. All right, so moving on. I believe this is the last point. Yes, it is. It is the big reveal that Joaquin is not Joaquin and that his, combined form is someone by the name of White. That's it.
I thought you were going to be like, here's the big reveal that Joaquin is white.
If you couldn't tell already, the whitest character ever, like name aside, he could have been named turquoise and
literally
like,
doesn't
that's
have a single other color in his palette other than white.
Except for like red bags under his eyes. That's about it. Maybe
like,
his
Joaquin is white. And you're like, I know.
Thank you. Yeah, right? It's like a little kid naming a dog or a cat, and they're like, White. You know what I mean? It's like its fur is white.
Son, we have to call him that all the time. Please don't just pick the first thing you like about it and like let's get a little bit more.
Mom said I can name it. Okay. Okay.
White. Fine, I'm calling him Poo Poo. All right, White's fine. Hello, White. Welcome to the family.
White. How you doing? So anyway, that's a huge reveal. And it was interesting reading some of the blog posts because we are clued into the fact that White is not just, it's not that White is all of these separate entities that are hijacking said thing. Like, White is its own entity, right? When the 5 siblings combined, it is a literal different person, which is interesting because we might have been under the assumption that like one of them gets control of the reins or like one of them gets to do this, and like it seems like that, but like White itself, I'm curious to see how menacing this thing is, and we're also informed by the blog post that this will be if it combines with all 5, will be the most powerful enemy that we have, because White was a Slayer before he was split, or he and she was split into all the siblings. So this is a big bomb dropped for sure. And now we understand why Jin Sung was like, I don't know this Joaquin guy, but I know that like if I think I know who you're talking about, you probably shouldn't go there. And so that makes perfect sense now because he's probably referring to White, the Slayer. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. What are our thoughts?
I definitely think it's interesting that again, somebody brought this up, I think, in our stream, where like this wasn't just like some rando who's like, oh, you're talking about White? Like this was Jin Sung, who we know is probably a pretty couple good notches above Karaka in terms of strength, or probably can at least go toe to toe with him. So for somebody of Jin Sung's level to be like, oh, you guys talking about White? If you are, like, I wouldn't fight. It's like,
I don't know.
Like
I don't know if he's necessarily. Well, I know you said it, but I maybe go toe to toe with Karaka. But I actually think, and I think some people were clarifying this in comments. I think Karaka. I could be wrong here, but I think Karaka has surpassed him in strength. He just refers to him as master out of respect because he was his trainer.
Well, let's just say then that he's at that bar where Karaka's at. Maybe he's not above it, but even still, my point stands is that Jin Sung is not a man to be fucked with by any means. So if someone like him is afraid either of or afraid for these people to encounter White, like that says something, because Jin Sung, even if Karaka is strong with him, doesn't seem to be scared of Karaka at all. So like for Jin Sung to be like, I don't know, I wouldn't even like that. It, at least to me, immediately establishes like, all right, if White happens, like if he becomes a whole, like, we're fucked. It was a good ride, guys, but like, because it's not, again, I guess like, Joaquin was this identity or false identity, whatever you want to call it, that they assumed once they were on the train, but like White is referred to a god even amongst the Slayers of Fug. And as we know, the Slayers of Fug are no laughing matter. I mean, we, again, from the blog post, were able to sort of pull out that like the Slayers of Fug, and obviously even amongst them, they're all, varying in strength, but are people that like make even the heads of the 10 great families be like, oh, was that? You said he was a Slayer? You know what I mean? And so it's like, again, what I love about this story is like just from context clues of how other characters respond to names or situations, you get to feel nobody like, I mean, in this latest chapter they do, but like up until then, nobody's outright like, yo, White is probably the strongest like ever. But like you just from context, you pick up that like this dude's he's not somebody you want to mess with, and he's not somebody you want to mess with not on the lane of like Lara Rowe maybe, right? Or like, a ranker who it's like, oh, they're strong, but they're like, they're strong, but it's kind of like a few notches up from where, but like White is like get rid of the roof. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's up there and you're not getting up to him. So it's like, it establishes the stakes here again, which is really cool of like, Bam, I think, again, even SIU says it in the blog post where it's like, the goal here really for Bam, unless he can pull some shit out of his ass, is like, he's going to have to axe this dude before he gets to, to his final form, to his final Frieza mode. Because if he gets to White mode, that's a wrap. I think it's definitely cool that like everybody's like, how the way that they build up to White, and this reveal is all the cooler for it.
Yeah. Gavin?
Yeah. So I'm getting to the point where I'm going to project my curiosities, and that is really like how they're going to like, I imagine in the future there's going to be some sort of like meshing of them. I mean, the plot looks like it's alluding to that, but what's interesting is that from what it seems is they need all 5 siblings there to form. They can't do it like willy-nilly, because obviously Hokin would have already formed with Anna, which was his sister, right then on the spot, if that wasn't the case. Otherwise he would just keep on forming and pick them as they go. So, like, off the bat, that tells me that if he were to form with Anna, if that's even physically possible, that right then and there, it tells you that they're going to become, like, a different entity and not have the same mindset. So, with that, I wonder what all of the other personalities of said family members are going to have, and especially when they all come together, what is that going to culminate to? Because obviously Hokin wanted to get to the other family members first to convince them to be on his side for the coming together. Because vice versa, if you have not Vincent, why am I thinking? Was his name Not Vincenzo?
Or Vicente?
Yeah, Vicente.
I'll call him V for now. But, he is obviously looking for the other family members to then get him on his side and be like, nah, like, I want this to do, like, these are my intentions. So I'm really curious on if they need all 5 to form or if they can kind of do them in their own sects. And really just what is created when you put all of these people together. Because obviously they say it unleashes a monster. And I don't think it's going to be one that it's an uncontrollable monster, which is important because it sounds like you have the mindset of 5 different people trying to speak at the same time, which is really just going to create something that really is just going to wreak havoc on everything. So I'm really wondering that if whatever product is born from this culmination of people, if it's going to be like an all superior entity with like this intellect or whatever and like knows its A to B's, or if it's going to be almost like a self thrown together Maj Podge like being that's kind of all over the place and is just like on a warpath to get people's heads. Like, I don't know, but I'm really curious on what this white, creation or product is. I can't wait to see it if we do.
Yeah.
I think that's what the blog post were sort of alluding to, like the answer to that, where it's not so much like this Frankenstein of like a dude who's got 5 different. It's like literally the 5 of these siblings together make like this one other person with one brain, one like sense of being, and like white is not Hokin, Vince Vincetti, whatever the fuck you want to call him. And we didn't get the other two's name.
Anna?
Right?
Yeah, Anna.
No. Well, Anna, but I'm saying the other two siblings now. Like he's not. It's not like that one brain's not split 5 ways. It's a different brain, and it's like white is literally his own. It does create like one separate entity,
which I can see. I just wonder what would make that uncontrollable is said person, and I don't even mean control in terms of somebody has to be above him telling him what to do. I mean it more like, say, the interaction that Wang Nam has with V, and they're kind of on the same sides, and although it's not control, he literally changed his mindset, and now is literally going against what V was initially wanted to in his terms. We're allies. I'm kind of going my own way. I'm doing my own thing. And in a way, I don't see that as control, but he's able to move like, I don't know how to explain this right. Like, I just wonder is whatever entity comes out of it, how is it going to make its decisions? Is it literally just what it wants at that moment, or is it willing to bend to the whim, if you want to say, of other people who it finds to be friends or whatever? Like, because uncontrollable for me is such a hard word to say, because like you can control people just off of having a conversation and like the change of mindset. So like, I just wonder how put together this person is. And I'm not saying they're just like a dummy monster drooling, fucking, whipping their dick out, doing whatever. Like, it's going to be obviously contained in some state, but just to what extent are they going to have, I guess, in terms of having full control over themselves? Yes.
We'd also like to thank Gavin for getting this video demonetized, so that when it blows up one day, we won't make a penny off of it. But anyway, moving on. I think if he answers to anyone, it might be Fug, being that he's a Slayer when he is that. But I do think, just to throw a prediction out there, that once he is his own entity, once he is white, that he's probably not going to answer to really anyone
but Fug.
But maybe Fug.
Well, we know that like white initially, right? The Slayer that he was, like, that's the person that Fug was like, no, that nigga's too dangerous. Like, seal him on the train. And
well,
don't let him
actually,
out.
he was also the god
even,
of Fug, or seen as, so
True.
he might even transcend
that's-
Fug in that.
Yeah.
Why? That's what I don't think he literally transcends them in terms of like status and reputation.
Yeah.
But I think he is not like, he doesn't side with Fug, at least anymore. I mean, I think Fug at one point wanted him. That's why he's a Slayer, because at one point they were like, yeah, like this dude's pretty fucking strong, like pick him. Yeah. But then when they saw the kind of, quote unquote monster that white is, they were like, oh no, we can't, like we're Fug, but we're not even fucking with that. Like that's like, seal him away. And so I think now I think it's going to happen at some point in the story, becomes whole or becomes white. Fug's not even going to be able to put a handle, get a handle on him.
With that, I wonder if Fug then, if that's true, I wonder if they also had their ties in terms of sealing him away in different compartments on the train. Like obviously Boros teen had something to do with it because he has resentment toward it, but I wonder if that was like another scheme through Fug to kind of be like, this person is very powerful, like we kind of need to get rid of him, and like by a weird convoluted mean, that just happened to be one where they sealed him away for however long. And now that they're in the situation that they are with Bam and, all this other stuff, they actually might be willing to now introduce him back into the puzzle. And
it could be too much of a, it could be too much of a risk, right? Because as far as we know, white is comprised of regulars, right? Like Joaquin and gang are all regulars, and so I would assume white, even though he's a different entity, is still a regular, which means that he can't kill Jihad anyway. So, now that the Thorn, well, even beforehand, right? Like before they were on to exactly where to find the Thorn and all that kind of stuff, they were probably, because, slight spoiler, incoming in 3, 2, 1. There are 11 Slayers that we know of, that we don't know of, but we got it. We know that. We saw it. Yeah, we know. They didn't say that there were 11.
No, but we
we
did
saw
that
that on a
quiz
quiz.
with-
Well, that's why I'm saying that's still a spoiler for anyone who didn't.
Oh, for
who
people
didn't-
watching? I
Yeah,
thought
for
you
people.
said us.
No,
Okay,
for people
okay.
watching.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay,
If
okay.
you didn't yet. Anyway, 11 Slayers, and I lost my goddamn train of thought. So what I'm saying is that they have a choice, Fug, right? Because like only one of them can fight Jihad at the end of the day, because if they're all regulars, right? That's why Bam's so special. They need that Thorn, which has irregular abilities in it, etc. So I think even, White as an entity was like, okay, we don't have this Thorn yet, and we like can't point him, and he's just kind of like chilling while we're trying to figure our ish out right now, and like he's just way too much of a wild card. Like I don't think we can really I don't even think it's worth it, right? Because like unless we get the Thorn, he's not even going to be able to kill Jihad anyway. And what's the point? He's gonna just he's gonna wreak havoc, and it's just not going to be good for us. It's not an efficient strategy. So maybe I could see something like that. I'm also curious to know Joaquin's father. Who that is, because they refer to him as this very like godlike, first of all, very godlike figure, because they're like, nah, none of us were ever even going to touch how powerful this dude was. He was the perfect sword. Doesn't matter how hard we train. Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because it's like, okay, is White more powerful than the father, right? Did they achieve that? Or do they think they did and he's still more powerful? If so, who the hell is this guy?
I believe, do they say that the father is the head of the Airy family, or that they're all just from the Airy family?
I'm assuming he's got to be the head, right?
I feel like he would, but I don't know.
I need clarification on this. I don't know, because, okay, we also have Angel referring to instances in the last read through that the 10 Great Families is known for like a bunch of instances of rape as well. I don't know. Is it that the 10 Great Families, like the one dude at the top literally goes around and sleeps with like a ridiculous amount of women, and they are all his children? Because they refer to Kun as his son. They refer to like every time they refer to the family head as the father from the small amount of tidbits of information that we've been given. And like I said, I'm totally ignorant to this, so I'm curious to know, unless it's a major spoiler and you guys could discern that, like if that's something you're able to tell us. If first of all, if the 10 Great Family heads are all male, if they're female, and if they are male, is that how that works? Is that how that hierarchy works? That they're the only ones having children? Like, you know what I mean? Like the sole father, and they impregnate, you know what I mean, ex-women? Or is it like they have their, like their family dispersed and then whatever?
I think it might depend, because I am personally of the belief that they're not, all the heads aren't male. So I think it's like if the head of the family is a male, that activity is probably something that happens. They probably go around and sleep with a bunch of random people and like try to create that family or breed the strongest people that way.
Yeah.
However, I think if they're female, it's kind of the opposite, or like, in a weird sense, it's like, oh, you'd want to sleep with me because I am the head of X family, right? So it's like for the guy, that's a buy-in to get into the family. Now, obviously, whether that actually happens is doesn't, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
But I think it like with the women who are the heads of the families, it's a little bit more of like a psychological, or it's a, like it's a reputation thing, as opposed to the men who probably like physically just overpower whoever they want and do whatever they want.
Yeah, I'm curious. I would like to know how that's all broken down.
Yeah, and I feel like the rape specifically would trickle down to not just the heads. I feel like it would be everybody else underneath, because then you have people like Angel, for example, where she slept with, or her mom slept with someone from the 10 Great Families, and I would assume that's not the head of the families.
Yeah,
I mean,
fair enough.
although that's not rape by any means, like it just goes to show that even if you're a part of the family, they're willing to like get around with other regulars.
Just
so I
having
feel like
the family name, like, for some people,
exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. What was my point in all that? What was
I
I saying in the beginning? The camera's dead, Gavin.
We'll give you a pat on the back and call it a day. You did a good job, soldier.
Oh man.
Damn it!
Like, all right, cool, everybody. Good
the
points.
father, Joaquin's father. We were wondering if he's the head of the family. Anyway, roundabout way. I just feel like he's got to be the way they pump him up, because it'd be weird to like pump up some rando dude, especially now. Blog Post Incorporated, we found out that the male survival rate is very low, and just because you're a male of the 10 Great Families doesn't mean like you're gifted. You're incredibly powerful, but like I don't know. I feel like the way they revere him is like someone that would be like, oh, like he's up there.
Like he's probably the head of that family.
So that's what's interesting. And all the kids seem relatively young, the 5 siblings. Yeah. So it was like, also, it's like, bro, you didn't even give yourself like 10 years to figure out if you're going to be able. They're like 10 years old. They're like, dude, I can't bench press 405. We're not catching up. That's it. Dark Demon spell. You know what I mean? They all just like, go together.
If you think about it, like, again in the blog post that we read, whether like the male survive, I think like literally, dude, especially with the 10th grade families, like that shit's cutthroat. I think if like literally by like 10 or 11, you have nothing to your name to prove that you as a male are useful to this family, like you might as well be dead to them.
Sure.
And so I think literally at 10, the dad was like, all right, show me what you got. And they were like, what? I was like, all right. And pulled out the giant sword, and they're like, oh no! So they went fucking,
Mighty Dark Demon Lord, hell!
They went Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and fused together.
I just want to add, they might not be that young, because keep in mind, Anak is like 800 years old and literally looks like she's 5.
We're like, look at that 5-year-old who looks 5 years old. It's like, that nigga's 500 years old.
And I love how we always refer to Anak as the example. We're like, but Anak's 300. Like, it's always
Look
Anak.
at that kid. She's 100.
We haven't even seen Anak in like years at this point. It's always Anak, that old hag.
Oh my god.
No, wait, do we know who Meesing is? Do we know how old she is?
What?
Meesing? Do we know how old she is?
Oh, no clue.
All right, fair enough.
Anyway,
all right, we'll go back.
No, but it's interesting too, because out of the siblings, we have Anna, though, who is also a female, right? So it's not all males that combine. Point is, it's like, I'm curious as to how they know that early, and it's like, if this was something where it's like they collectively had given up, or it was like, there's this way to gauge latent ability where it's like, you're a pimple on your dad's ass, dude. Like, you're not going to make it,
Well, they all came to the realization that they weren't individually going to reach that power, so that's why they then researched that dark magic.
I think what he's getting at is where, like, the Kuhn family, for example, I think has a bunch of ways outside of, like, straight combat, at least for the males, to prove that they have value. That like, Kuhn himself, for example, highly intelligent, has nothing specifically to do with fighting, but, like, that man is a valuable asset to the family regardless, even just with his mind. Where I think the Airy family is a little bit more about like raw strength. And they're known for their white hair and they use long swords.
It would signify the sword.
Exactly.
Like he's the perfect sword,
so it's like,
right?
I think their family upholds this value of like, if you can't use the sword well, you're useless to this family. And it's like, so, whatever age those kids are, if they couldn't, at least in the dad's eyes, they couldn't.
And I wonder how he felt after they all combined, if he got to see them and, have that interaction with the father. Because if he just looked at him and you were like, wow, you guys are just a mess. Like, you're totally against everything that I'm about. Like, I just wonder if they had an interaction with him.
We do know that the method they used to fuse themselves together is called a forbidden spell.
Correct.
It's not something that's like utilized anywhere. So it's like,
I just picture him going up to him and he takes his thing with his pinky out and he goes, pathetic.
Yeah.
Who is it? Like,
and just smites them all in one shot. Yeah, interesting stuff. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, folks, those are our thoughts on the chapters that we had read on our live stream today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and listening. We had fun with this discussion for sure. Again, if you guys enjoyed the content, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, sharing with your friends, and commenting your thoughts down below. What did you think of our discussion? What did you think of these chapters or the characters within them and the story and plot elements? And what do you think of Tower of God as a whole? Also, guys, refer to our description where we have links to all the ways you could support the channel and things like merch. If you want to rep some AoA swag, if you want to support us on Patreon to get exclusive benefits to the show, if you want to hit us up on our community Discord to chat with the brilliant community that we've cultivated so far, a bunch of fantastic people there, and some of the mods that had put together things like our blog posts and all that kind of stuff, holding down the fort. Hit us up on our socials, whether it's individual or it is the show in general, to get quick updates on what is going on in our lives and the show at large, and hit us up on those audio-only platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, etc. If you can't sit down and watch us on YouTube, you have things to do. I know life is busy, so if you want to listen to us on the go, we have that option available to you as well. We do post 7 days a week as well for anyone that is new here, so stay tuned for more AoA content each and every day. Gavin, end us off.
Y'all are beautiful, and not only adorable, but one of a kind.
And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace out.
Later.
Hey, you know what it is, dog. Ninjas are samurais, blaze of the kunais. Find me in the leaf of the cloud, screaming out Bankai. We just some ghouls though, who like seeing parts fly.